In this lesson, you'll learn how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. Unlike meaning that they are different. Fractions must have a common denominator in order to add or subtract. If we had a third plus a sixth, you can't add them together because they're different pieces, different sizes. You can't say it's, oh, a third and a sixth, so it's 2. You can't do it. You have to find a common denominator first. So it takes a few extra steps, but it's a lot of fun. Remember, the denominator is the number downstairs. The number downstairs is the denominator. You cannot add or subtract until the denominators are the same. The first method we're going to use is our hexagon and our pattern blocks. So this represents one whole, and we're going to look at each equation to see if they first have a common denominator, and in this case they do not. 1/6 plus 2/3. So we can't add them together until we have a common denominator. So if we look at 1/6, 2/3, how can I make those pieces have the same size? Well, if you play around with your pattern blocks, hopefully you'll find that 2/6 is equal to 1/3. They fit perfectly over each other. So you can cut both of these into 6. So you can say that 2/6 and 2/6. 2/6 for each of those 1/3. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to keep the 1/6, and now we're going to turn that 2/3 into 4/6. So they're the same size, they're the same amount, they have the same amount shaded, but they're just different sizes. So now 2/3, we have exchanged it to make it 4/6. And the 6th already was a 6th, so we didn't have to change that. So 1 plus 4 is 5. So 1/6 plus 2/3 is equal to 5/6. Another example, if we look at 1/2 minus 1/3. Different size pieces, different denominators, so we have to find a common denominator. So let's see. Well, we know back here, if hopefully you remember back here, this split into sixths, and I don't think, no, let's see, halves cannot split into 2/3. If you want to use your pattern blocks to see, there's something hanging off, so it's a little too much. So let's see if, oh, okay, 3/6 is equal to 1/2. So you want to try it out on your pattern blocks. 3/6 is equal to 1/2, so you've got 1, 2, and then 3. And you'll see that it fits perfectly. So you've got 1, 2, 3/6, and then this 1/3 can turn into 2/6. So let's change the 1/2 into 3/6 minus, and let's change that 1/3 into 2/6. Now they have the same denominator. So go ahead and show that. Alright, so you've got half of the hexagon is covered. So half of 6 is 3. And then 1/3 of the hexagon is covered, or 2/6. So now you know 3 minus 2 equals 1. So your answer is 1/6. A second method is using your fraction bars to add and subtract. So you have your whole out. Get out your whole bar to represent your one whole. Now if you have 6/8 minus 1/2, remember you have to take a few extra steps in order to make the denominators the same. So you have to figure out what can you do to make these eighths and this half the same size. Well, as you are investigating and exploring, you'll see that these are perfectly lined up. So you'll see that you can exchange that half for 1, 2, 3, 4 eighths. So that's what I did down here. So I exchanged the 1/2 for 4 eighths. And then the 6/8 can stay the same pretty much. So now you have your 6/8 minus 4/8. Now your denominators are common. And basically, you're trying to figure out the difference. What is the difference in these two lengths? Remember, this is a measurement model, so what is the difference? What can fit here? Well, as you can see, those 2/8 slip right down in that spot. So 6 minus 4 we know is 2. 2/8 is your difference. If you look at this example, you start out with 4/5. 4/5 minus 1/10. So you want to make, again, those denominators have to be the same. They have to have common denominators. So we'll take the few extra steps. If you're exploring with your fraction bars, you'll see that right here, if you split a 5th in half, it becomes a 10th. That makes sense. Half of 10 is 5. So what we can do is we can turn each 5th into 2/10. So that's what I've done here. I took 4/5 and turned it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths. So 8/10 minus, and the tenth stays the same because the denominators will be the same, minus 1/10. Now the difference, what is the difference here? If you slip those right into it, you'll see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/10. So 8 minus 1 is 7. The third and final method is finding the least common multiple. If we have 2/8 plus 1/2, these are a few steps you can take if you do not have manipulatives or if you just want to use paper and pencil. Step 1, you want to list the multiples of each denominator. So the first thing you want to do is list the multiples. Multiples are basically just 8 times 0, 8 times 1, the answer is kind of like skip counting. So the multiples of this first denominator, 8, 8 times 0 is 0, 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 24, 32. We'll stop there. Then the multiples of the next denominator, multiples of 2. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5. We'll stop there. Step 2, now we want to find the least common multiple, or the LCM. So you want to find what's common. Both of them have to have the same number. And you see that they do both have 0, but we can't use 0. So you'll see, if you go up the line, they both have 8. So the least common multiple is 8. Step 3, you now want to rewrite both fractions so that the new denominator is the LCM. So I've done that on the next board, so we have plenty of room. So step 3, we wanted to rewrite it. This is how it used to look. Now we've rewritten it up and down. It's easier to write it up and down so you can do all your work over on the side instead of trying to figure out which one goes with what. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So you started with 2/8. Your new denominator is your least common multiple, which is 8. This marker's not wanting to work. Okay, and then same down here. Now you have a common denominator. So step 4, what you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So whatever you do to the bottom, the denominator, you have to do to the top, the numerator. So how did we get from 2 to 8? Well, we know 2 times 4 is 8. So the denominator, we have to do the same to the numerator. 1 times 4 is 4. Up here, how do we get from 8 to 8? Well, it's just times 1. So we times 1 on the top. 2 times 1 is 2. Now, step 5, we can now add or subtract. In this case, the operation tells us to add. So now you're going to add the numerators only because, remember, your denominators are the same. Dad, don't add the denominators if they're the same. So 2 plus 4 is 6, and the denominator stays the same. So your answer is 6/8. Now your last step is to simplify if needed. And hopefully here you see that these numbers are even, so we can simplify. They're both even numbers, so we can divide them by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So your simplest answer is 3/4. And you may use the least common multiple with paper and pencil. You may use your fraction bars, your pattern blocks, and there are other methods that we'll learn in class as well. But these all help you to add and subtract unlike denominators. It just takes a few extra steps in order to make sure that denominator is common.